how many days into April did it take before we even started to address the monthly quota? I forgot now.
I feel like it was about 20 to 22 days, give or take.
You know what? Now that I brought it up, I have to look up when we put up the episodes, like the dates of those recordings. And for some strange reason, my computer picked a perfect time to be a slow load, right?
How old's that MacBook now?
Oh, it's a 2021 MacBook Pro.
Okay.
So this is my newest, like a fairly recent one, right? So that would have nothing to do with it. At least
Okay, because it's just like how much. I'm just thinking, like, how much stuff do you put in that computer to make it slower if it's that new?
No, it's just I think some days it's the connection, and I think these days it's also just Safari sucks.
Oh.
April 23rd. That's when we taped episode 81.
Because I do remember, like, messaging you maybe 3 or 4 days before saying, like, yo.
Let's do an episode. You're behind. You won't meet quota.
Basically.
Yeah, I think that's what you said. Something to that effect, right?
Yeah.
Well, here we are on the 2nd day of May in 2023. There's your date today. And we're going to meeting half our quota right now. Albeit in Space Heater chat form, and it's just me and you tonight, Kevin.
Yes.
Because, well, everyone else has a life.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grant it today is my day off, and I just really couldn't get up. Really couldn't do too much. If there's anything productive that I might have done today, it's that the website in its circa 2010 form and the Twitter are at least up to date. Finally. Like I just realized we've done 9 recordings. I believe 9 recordings. And I may have already miscounted. So so now I'm going to look at that again. If you'll excuse me for a second. Let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Nine, yeah. 9 recordings so far in 2023. I have not properly updated the Twitter for any episodes we've done so far in 2023. And we've done 9. That's how bad this is. We've talked off the air. You've offered to at least take some control. Not total control, but I might give you the keys to the social medias.
If only because I'm a little more active on Twitter nowadays. Not that much, but I feel like if I'm on Twitter, I would then think like, oh, well, yeah, let's actually just, post that the episode's up and maybe.
And you'll probably come up with something more smart aleck to say in posting those episodes.
And like come up with stuff to talk about. I don't know. Like,
yeah, or maybe put up a news story.
I'm not perfect either. I have my life that I go about.
Don't we all, right? But... Like this is the thing about being this type of like a high level content creator, which frankly neither of us are.
Mm-hmm.
None of us are. We all have our own, our own separate walks of life.
Yeah, and
away from these type of things.
And your job is more taxing than mine right now.
Well, if you remember if anybody out there remembers what my job is, I've brought it up only once in the entire history of the podcast if I brought up my regular job.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you don't know it now, then that's probably an encouragement for anybody to listen to all of the past episodes.
Okay, there, Mike.
Ever done. and then you'll be able to figure it out.
Okay, there, Mike.
I will
don't think
acknowledge
anyone's that dedicated.
no one's that dedicated, but I will acknowledge
just for that reason. No,
not for that reason. No one would be, but I will. But if people want a clue, it was at least in version 2. I acknowledged it.
I have to say some of those version 1s are still gems.
I miss really having. Yeah, I think we just said this off the air. There are days I miss having either or both of Neil and Adam on the show, and they have their lives to live right now too.
Though one is a little more accessible than the other.
Yeah, well, because that one has at least appeared a couple of times in version 2.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's been a while, so we'll try and you know what? I'll try and contact Neil, and we'll see if he can do Anime North. We're going to talk a little bit about Anime North a little later on, but okay. The reason we're just doing this tonight, every so often, whether it's a regular episode, certainly in a Space Heater chat setting, Kevin and I, and maybe and maybe James too, we just want to settle down and just stay away from the anime side of things, and then just go on the manga side, just for a little bit. Like most of our conversations talk about everything as a whole, our fandom as a whole, right? Like, because the stuff, our fandoms have different overlaps.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, James is a collector of a lot of the basic physical media. I mean, core physical media. When I say core physical media or core merchandise, I'm usually referring to something like manga and anime home video. And Kevin
video games. James has a very extensive video game collection.
Yes, he does. Would you think of it as core merchandise in our fandom? Video games?
Yeah. It's basically just physical media.
Mm-hmm. Or just
not merchandise, because you know, over the years it's shifted away from anime sales, like the anime DVDs and Blu-rays. Those sales, it's kind of shifted more towards merchandise sales now.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of hinted at that in the, like, we had that conversation last.
Although manga did certainly grow over the last several years.
And that'll be at the heart of what we ultimately talk about later on.
Mm-hmm.
So, now that we've kind of gone down this discussion, is there truly a core item, piece of merchandise, or physical media, anything? Is there a core piece in the media mix these days in our fandom?
A core media?
Like a core piece of a core line of merchandise, or a core line of something physical, something tangible, something you can hold.
I'd say merchandise-wise, it's figures.
Okay, merchandise.
100% it's figures.
Okay.
Like, whether or not they're Nendoroids or Figmas or the nicer PVC statues, like, that's what a lot of people I see are buying nowadays.
Okay. It's maybe I have to shift the question a little bit and say, like, because maybe it's an apples and oranges argument, right? I always said, like, in the aughts, maybe physical home video, DVDs especially, were the core item in our fandom. May or may not have been the core item in our fandom. And manga has always been there, and like physical books has always been there. So maybe, is it an apples and oranges argument? Because you're talking primary, and then what's the word I'm looking for here? And then derivative?
Secondary or tertiary?
Yeah, secondary or derivative. Because I think we can make this argument that that the anime and manga, maybe they're the original items in all of this.
And you can still say that anime is still the core product. It's just people aren't necessarily buying the core product, but it's still the core product in which people consume this stuff.
The original thing. I was about to say the original
more often than not,
but the original part of it. Like, I mean, like we can make this argument. We can have this debate as to what's considered the original, the chicken egg. Is it manga or is it anime?
Well, it depends on what really came first, right? So stuff like Samurai Champloo and like Wolf's Rain or Carol and Tuesday or like SSSS Gridman, like that's kind of stuff was an anime first.
Cowboy Bebop?
Pretty sure Gridman was an anime first.
Cowboy Bebop?
And then because that was popular and they wanted to do the whole media mix thing, they'll make a manga for it. Whereas more often than not, anime does use manga and light novels as their original source material now.
Mm-hmm.
And you still get some video games and visual novels too, although less so nowadays.
But there was a point that was the original piece, right? There was a time.
There never seemed to be that many anime adaptations of video games, to be honest.
Well, yeah, but then again, we'd be talking probably, depending on where you're going, maybe something that's a little too mature for some people.
Well, there's not nearly as many visual novel adaptations as there used to be.
Fair enough.
That got taken over by light novels, I feel.
Okay. So going back to my original question, forget what's considered primary and secondary and tertiary. What's just considered the big one these days? And you still would you still stick with figures?
Like if people want to buy it, you mean?
Yeah, like people like what where's the flock? Where's our fandom flocking to? Would you still say figures?
Yeah, figures, manga nowadays.
Is it 1 or 1A, or is there a clear
video
number
games?
1 in all that?
Oh.
Or is it a little bit more diverse now? So we can use this argument that no one part of the media mix, like, or the fandom and the industry behind it, is not dependent on one part of the media mix anymore.
It'd be anime and video games then that are the core product as a whole.
Still, but even if they don't generate, well, or it's still needed anyway. It's still the foundation of the entire mix.
Like regardless. Figures are a derivative of anime and video games and manga for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Like people will usually buy a figure because they liked that character in the show,
and that could be as much of it.
Like you probably do get people who will buy figures just because it's pretty,
mm-hmm.
or if you buy some figures of original characters created by artists, then you usually buy because you support the artist. Okay. And you think it's a good looking figure too.
Yeah. Or am I really starting to confuse the situation now?
I think you're overthinking it a little bit.
Yeah, but you know, we're both guilty of versions of that, right?
But basically, yeah, you know, most people consume anime.
Mm-hmm. Most people
and consume video games. And you can say people do consume manga a lot more often now, but it's still without a doubt that manga sales are largely driven from people having watched the anime.
Mm-hmm. Which comes
go back to the example of how when Attack on Titan came out in the USA, it came out months before the anime debuted. And so the story goes, it wasn't doing that great, because I think they did put out maybe a few volumes out, and like retailers were kind of questioning this series, and then Kodansha was like, just wait until April, and then April happened.
That's when the anime debuted in North America.
Back in those times, yes, and then history, and then that's the history.
Or the rest is history, as the saying goes.
Yeah, the rest is history, yes.
So in the end, that's all. It comes back down to not my theory, but what I stated in the past. Basically, anime may not be the product in and of itself, or the big product that people will flock to. But still, people will consume it. It ends up driving everything else ultimately.
Yeah.
So when we talk about what's the core here, it's not necessarily that product necessarily being being important because people buy it. It's that product because it convinces people to just buy into the IP. Period. Whatever those products are afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Because a lot of it is, oh yeah, I saw the anime, now I want to read the manga. So people will realize, oh, it was originally a manga, or it was originally a light novel,
or
originally a video game.
or failing to be able to get the anime. You just want to know still what's the rest of the story, or have something there, or have something as a reminder, as a figure, like a figure, or like art books, just a reminder of, just a memento of the fact you liked something, right?
Yeah. So in my case, I was largely an anime and manga buyer, and I did buy a decent amount of video games too, though I did stop buying a lot of anime over the last several years because I rarely watch anime nowadays. And I also stopped buying video games en masse. Like, I do still buy them, but I do buy significantly fewer than before.
Yeah.
Because I just don't have the time to play everything. So I try to be selective. Keyword try. Whereas manga is still the only thing that I am still willing to buy some titles either blind or maybe only having read 1 or 2 volumes of something.
Yeah.
Though I will admit that I don't buy all of my stuff new anymore.
Okay. Well, it's
Or I
nice.
don't buy a lot of my stuff at retail price or close to retail. Even when I'm buying it through direct channels.
I think for me personally, it's a very similar trajectory because there was this point when I was much younger, as fandom really started to come of age here. And when I say that, we're talking late 90s, aught and noughts, where I would scoop up just about anything. And then I realized, one, I was going broke, sort of. And two, well, space was becoming a thing. And then the other dilemmas, just like you stated, just can't have the time to enjoy it.
I need another 2 shelves to properly display everything nowadays.
Well, that's impressive because I probably would need at least double that. Anyway. But the thing is, as we've gone through the past, how many years now since we started version 2 and me getting back into things? Like 5 years now, right? The 5 years since we started version 2, I've gotten back into things and bought again. Not to the same degree as back then, but maybe still a fair amount. And, and that kind of leads us to where we are and why we're chatting this evening. So, and once again, it's about manga. Like we said, we're going to talk about manga. All right. So, quick story. Although Kevin already knows this, so I'm just sharing it with you. Obviously, you guys know one of my watches recently was Kaguya-sama Love is War. Become a fan of it. And as I said, and I'm living out some of the stuff I talk about. You watch a show, you like it enough, you want to see the story again, or read the story again. That's probably the key word.
It is one of the better shonen romances that have come out lately.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting how a lot of people think it is a shoujo series, or that it was originally targeted to girls just because it's a romance, but no, that's not the case.
But for me, then I started to, I only would sporadically watch episodes, would forget them sometimes, take months to be able to watch episodes again. Then sometimes there's this point where I have to, binge watch, mini binge chunks of episodes. And then it comes to the point where maybe I'm curious about reading the manga. And my initial channels is a little different. I end up going to the library. How many of you out there listening to this would read your manga by borrowing it from a public library? How many? I mean, we might be exceptions, because I do. I know Kevin does, or has in the past.
I don't read through the library as much as I used to, but I do still borrow from the library from time to time.
Yeah. But how many out
Usually
there?
I'll use the library to try out newer series that I might be interested in buying, and if they don't have it, I try to put those requests in.
Yes.
But what's kind of interesting lately is that they rejected some of my requests for some of the Kodansha shoujo manga that have come out lately.
Oh, they're not buying or they're not adding it to their shelves?
Just straight up rejected it. And these are series that are only 1 or 2 volumes long. These are new series.
Maybe it's a
So
budget thing.
they can't use length as an excuse.
They can't use financial commitment because it's probably not the biggest financial commitment.
Because it's not.
Okay.
Whereas, ages ago when I tried to get them to buy Toriko at that point was almost 20 volumes long. So yes, in that sense, that was a financial commitment.
Did they or did they not?
And they did not. But you could argue that perhaps that was for the best.
Okay.
And it took them a long time to get Black Clover in.
Yeah.
Because when I requested Black Clover, it was also into the teens. But Black Clover was also a lot more popular than Toriko ever was.
Right.
They eventually did, but it took quite a while.
Yeah. Okay. So going back to where I am in my story and what I'm trying to get and where I'm going with it, and it's not much different with you, except for the fact that maybe I do constantly try to read the story a little more. Once I started to borrow volumes of Kaguya-sama from the library, maybe 4 or 5 at a time. I was able to put them off for a week or so, or maybe a week and a half, and then drilled through the 5 volumes just before I was supposed to return it, even though I could renew it.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked, there's plenty, they had like plenty of copies, literally dozens of copies of each volume sometimes to circulate. Just had to ask for it, had to reserve it, and it was sent to my branch. Right. But then as I kept reading, I liked it enough knowing, and then at the very least, we're at this point where we know this is a complete series. So I know what the commitment would be. And I said, I'm willing to do the commitment. Boy, that sounds like a really out of context word to use, commitment. So here I am thinking about buying it. But just like you, Kevin, I wouldn't necessarily just jump at the first opportunity to purchase it. Maybe I want to do this on my own terms, i.e., look for something look for value, something a little cheaper. Maybe you look for it used. Maybe you look for a sale. Look at the eBay ads, look at the Facebook marketplace. And eventually, yes, I found a good chunk of them. A guy willing to sell the first 24 volumes of 28 for Kaguya-sama. This was some months back. and made the purchase. I forgot the exact amount I paid for it because sometimes you just want to forget. But I know it wasn't that bad of a price. And it was a fascinating conversation when I went to pick it up because it was here in the West End in Mississauga. And the guy who sold it to me looked at the books. They were in good condition. But we ended up having this interesting conversation about the books themselves.
Okay.
Right? And he touched on a lot of the points we talked about during the pandemic series to this point. And that was, books being out of print and then the delays in reprints, and how different places, different printers in different places would be printing them, but not all prints were made the same. Not all publishing, not all editions were the same. And sometimes a lot of that would depend on the materials, sometimes, and where they were printed and maybe the resulting materials.
Yes, because
and he went on this
because when all the printers got backed up, like publishers had to find other ways to try and get these out. They had to go outside of their usual print houses and printing presses to get this stuff made.
Yes, and this was at a point where, and we're going to allude to where we stand today on this, but this was at a point where, because of the pandemic, there was a lot of interest in home and more in personal entertainment. Having said that, doesn't sound right.
Well, not really. You just made it sound worse than it is.
Yes, but that's how we roll on this show. But it was at a point where there was a big spike in home entertainment, and when I say home entertainment, we say books as well. We put books in that. It isn't a secret. We've talked about it, about how Manga has done during the pandemic. Interest has spiked, if not exploded. And I forgot, I think you have a better sense of the numbers than I do, but we just know it was good.
Well, in terms of what? Manga sales?
Yeah.
Yeah, exploded.
Year-over-year basis, right? Especially during 2020, 2021.
Yeah, numerous series went massively out of print, as I said in the past. Series that kind of stagnated in sales got revived because of TikTok. And just it became a lot harder to find a lot of stuff, even current stuff.
Yeah,
early volumes of Chainsaw Man were not easy to find.
Yeah, and then
you actually did need to pre-order sometimes for certain things if you wanted them right away.
Mm-hmm. So, and then that's before we get to back orders and older titles, and that's another story altogether. But we ended up having this nice conversation, and then he started to tell, okay, yeah, no two printer editions are alike, and so always he kind of hinted to me, pay attention to where these editions are printed, and that might tell you a lot about their paper quality. Some paper can be thicker than others. And I know Kevin and even James are keen on that. So can you give me a quick primer on that? I mean, in my left hand right now is volume 6 of Beastars. Yes, I've started reading Beastars in manga wise, and it's gone the same way as Kaguya-sama, in that I'm interested in buying at least a used copy of that, and that could happen pretty soon.
How are you finding it so far?
I like it. I mean, I thought well of the anime. I just haven't gotten around to watching any more of it since the first season. And volume 6 is the latter stages of the first season.
Yeah, early on, Haru Itagaki really did nail down the story, I have to say. People do kind of question where it goes later on, but those early stories are so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. I'm curious to see where it goes. Maybe I'll be let down. I think sounds like people are. I should brace for that. But I look at it, and maybe I haven't held manga enough to really know. This one says it's printed in the USA. This was a first printing in 2020. Oh, yeah, this says at the back, first printing May 2020. Volume 6 of Beastars. And it's finished now in North America.
It wrapped up not too long ago.
Yeah. So 22 volumes. 2020 at volume 6. That's not bad. So what can you tell me about this? Like, is it like, does it matter where sometimes it's printed? I remember Italy being mentioned in where volumes, certain volumes were printed as well, and I think I remember seeing that a few times in my Kaguya-sama stack.
I will say, for 98% of the human populace, it really doesn't matter, because only people who like scrutinize and nitpick these kinds of things are the ones that are going to notice, let alone care.
Because noticing and caring can be two different things in this context.
And am I one of those people?
Yes.
It's a case by case basis.
Okay. Sorry, I put words in your mouth.
Yes, you did.
I'm sorry. I've been accused of that lately. Explain.
So there are a number of different series where, when they were being printed or reprinted, they would use printers from Italy to put out more books, because, usually with the ones in, say, the US or Canada, those are backed up, and Viz or Kodansha or Seven Seas or any other company would want to prioritize their ongoing stuff for those, because those are on a stricter schedule, and you need to always keep on putting out new stuff.
And we're talking recent titles or big titles, like
Just
the equivalent of a AAA.
Just anything new.
Okay.
Some interesting exceptions to that were the My Hero Academia box set 1, which compiles the first 20 volumes. But that release, at least in its first printing, was printed in Italy. So, more often than not, at least in my experience, the Italian printings of these books are a little thinner than the ones made in or printed in the USA or in Canada. And so, if you wanted to, let's say, want a box set of My Hero Academia, let's say you found like an empty box for it, not like with nothing in it, and you have those early volumes, your volumes 1 through 20, if they were printed in Canada or the US, will not fit in the box, because the Italian printings of the 1 through 20 in the box set are thinner, and so it's a tighter fit.
It's essentially made to fit more like it.
Yes.
Like, it's not necessarily on purpose. It's just they had the books, and then we had to make the box for them.
Yeah, because when you plan all the dimensions for this stuff, like that's all taken into consideration. I know various reprints of Chainsaw Man and Nisekoi and Banana Fish. Some of those reprints were also done in Italy. So in the case of Nisekoi, I do have a couple of the recently reprinted volumes of, I think, volume like 3 and 4. Like a couple of my recent ones for that are from Italy, because it took several months for some of those early volumes to get reprinted in the first place. And then if I compare it to another identical volume 4, for example, or even to another volume in the series where it's like it's supposed to be of similar page count, like you'll notice that it's like a little bit thinner. So it's like sometimes I would imagine, I can't claim to be super knowledgeable or qualified in this, but I would imagine that like the paper stock comes into play, like how it's being binded. That's what can result in like a book being a little thinner than another one, assuming that the page count is about the same.
Yeah. So, having said all of this, is bigger better? Where I'm using all these, I'm doing all this double. Might as well just go whole hog.
I like to think it's better, to be honest, if it's a little thicker. But like I said, most people don't care, and probably shouldn't care. But I will say, for, let's say, I think I have 1 or 2 of my Chainsaw Man books are from Italy, and sometimes like the edges of the spine will bleed over onto like the front and the back cover respectively, and it doesn't look as clean as a result.
That's an interesting way to put it.
So that was another reason why a lot of people did not like some of those Italian printings of some of the stuff that got reprinted.
Sounds like real collectors out there.
Yeah, like a lot of these things kind of, well, to say that, like, I sometimes do nitpick the books that I get. It's a case by case basis, right? Like it's, well, for me, if the spine bleeds under the front and back cover like that is a turn off for me. Like, I don't like that.
To show me a picture of that, just so I know exactly what you're illustrating here, or trying to illustrate.
I have to find either. See, I remember seeing this in Chainsaw Man and Isekai, so I have to see which ones had that example if I can find them. But
okay. Anyway,
but like, in terms of like the paper quality too, I generally don't care, to be honest. I sometimes do notice, because you'll know if the quality of the paper is, air quotes, good or not as good, close quotes, if you can see the like, if, let's say, you hold a page to the light and you can kind of see the other side of the page go through a little bit, you can see a bit of the other side of the page.
Okay, see through it. Like, yeah, it's a bit opaque, and hold it to the light.
More translucent, I guess. I wouldn't say opaque.
Oh, well, opaque is the opposite. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like, how translucent are we talking? Because I'm looking at now pages of this volume of Beastars I have through the light, and I can kind of see the other side a little bit. I guess that's how much. So, well, it is something to ponder. And maybe you're right. It shouldn't matter. We're talking, and it depends on how, maybe whether or not you care. Like, it's probably a bunch of factors. How much do you value this title? How much of a collector are you? How well do you handle your books? Do you mangle them, or do you treat them like fine ceramics? Do you put them in a comic book bag, which I have been known to do in the past?
And I don't, for the most part.
I mean, it was just a habit. That's a habit of that's an old habit from my time at Comic Den. They would wrap up their issues of their graphic novels, their manga in comic book bags sometimes.
But if you do keep, I guess the assumption is why people do this is because if you do keep them in the bags and keep them away from sunlight, it does slow down the page yellowing process, I would assume. Is that the case?
Yeah, I suppose, but I always thought it was, is it air or is it sunlight? It's air, isn't it? That would cause that, wouldn't it?
I don't recall.
Like, I mean, I it's lost on me. I remember hearing this. I think for a long time it was sun, but then there was like evidence to say that like air could do it too. Air could be just as much a cause. But yeah. But as I said, because of the way the pandemic upped demand, other sources had to be found, and this is where we are now. But over the last week, and this is where we start to get it back into the business side of it, not the collector's side. Last week, or not necessarily a friend of the show, but I've talked with Deb Aoki once or twice, and obviously anybody who keeps up with the industry knows who she is. Like she's been there, for a very long time. She's been a commentator about the manga industry for a very long time. Was she at TCAF over the weekend?
I don't know. I didn't see her there, but I don't recall if she was.
She's had her presence there, hasn't she?
She's been there before, yeah.
So,
but I don't know if she was this year.
Okay. Said I've talked with her once or twice online, mainly because she's close friends with Matt Alt, and was tickled that we're trying to help push sales of his Pure Invention book. We should get back to that another time, but
well, she also does have that manga podcast that she does with Christopher Butcher and Chip Zdarsky, who created Sex Criminals and other amazing comics. And I believe David Brothers contributes as well from time to time. I'm just very far behind on that podcast, so I'm a little fuzzy on that.
I'm fuzzy on a lot of things anyway. So she wrote in a couple weeks ago, I guess. Basically, for Publishers Weekly, she asked, are manga sales evening out? Basically, the idea that there's been a plateau. And that while there still has been growth year over year, it's not explosive. It's there, but it's not as good as it was the previous year. That's the upshot of the article. And basically, the rest of the article kind of tries to explain it a little bit. And how should publishers start to react to this? Should they brace themselves? Should we brace ourselves for another crash of some sort, like we saw at the end of the knots?
Well, that crash was caused by a major American retailer closing down. And that was, I always forget if it was during the recession or if it was right before the recession.
But nonetheless, right? So much of the article talked a little bit about, well, how things are different from back then, right? Our means of consumption, and it comes back down to the media mix. Our means of consumption and becoming familiar with IPs that are depicted in manga have changed. And distribution methods have changed, whether they're physical or digital. Right? I think one thing that stuck out is the suggestion that in terms of the first part, and it's a reference to the two two of the core products, the anime and the manga. Whereas in like manga has moved away from DVD, moved away from broadcast, a lot more streaming now.
You mean just in terms of like people consuming the stuff?
Yeah, in terms of basic consumption. But the thing is, it's funneled into maybe one or two places. I think let me just not really consolidated. There's places there's a few options to consume. Because remember what we said. Where's the when Sony took over? When Sony took over Crunchyroll, where's the now competition coming from now? And we thought, would it be in the form of a new streamer? But time is proving if it's going to happen, maybe it'll happen through more legacy companies wanting to add to their own streaming libraries, like the Peacocks, like the Netflixes. Well, Netflix is not really legacy, but other places. Amazon used to, but that's somewhere else now. High Dive. But let's face it, Sony and Crunchyroll are the big ones right now. But
although you could say Sentai is very thankful that they have Oshinoko right now.
Yeah.
Because that brought a lot of people to their site.
Mm-hmm. But there's this belief, and she hints that there's a little bit more diversification in consumption away from DVD, away from depending on broadcast, because let's face it, Cartoon Network doesn't do it like that anymore, and Teletoon doesn't do it like that anymore, and Teletoon doesn't exist anymore.
Not in English.
Yeah, okay. But she just
the French channel is still around.
Mm-hmm. But then she used the phrase book sales channels continue to consolidate. But they become a big part of major booksellers for Amazon, for Barnes and Noble, for Indigo up here in Canada. And then they're finding themselves in other types of stores. So our means to purchase has changed too. It's less like maybe there was a degree of dependence back then. Still, maybe it comes down to big booksellers, but there's just more. There are still more sellers now. At while a Barnes and Noble, losing a Barnes and Noble or an Amazon would be a big blow. At least Amazon's not going anytime soon. Like I say, right? Stuff you think isn't going to go anytime soon. And then of course there's where do they go digitally themselves?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll admit I skimmed the article a little bit, but
you are starting to see some independent bookstores popping up and trying to do this thing from scratch too.
Do which thing? Like
sell manga. Like, mm-hmm. These people were into manga, and so they decided to try and sell stuff and try and make a business out of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
there's a few of these stores in the States right now.
Well, we're up here in Canada. Still aren't the greatest number of options. Although you still have your dedicated retailers. I mean, in Toronto, you still have your Anime Extremes. Well, I don't think they do the manga.
There are plenty of comic book retailers. It's just that whether or not they also sell manga is a different thing. And if they're too busy just trying to run their day-to-day, maybe they don't have a visible website, so you don't even know that they'd exist. Mm-hmm. Because perhaps they don't do online retail, or perhaps you just can't find them when you do a search, like a general search, because like their SEO isn't up to snuff.
Right. Well, on this note, I think it's Independent Bookstore Week in Canada. I remember hearing that on the radio on the topic of legacy forms of media. So it's just a bunch of things to think about. And then coming back to the big sellers, especially here, we can speak anecdotally. Indigo has big sections now for manga.
Yeah, those sections have really grown.
Yeah, they do take up significant spaces in any Indigo you will walk into these days, or chapters if that brand still exists wherever you see it.
Yeah,
You'll see
they realized it sold, so that's why they expand the sections. That's why the discounts aren't as good anymore, and that's
because they don't.
probably why they closed up some of the loopholes that were there when you wanted to buy stuff at a significant discount. Don't ask me how I know that.
Yeah, you're the man. You're the man, Kevin.
Well, I wasn't the only one, that's for sure.
No kidding. No.
Even in this podcast.
No, because you and James have taught me how to get fixes in post Comic Den era for me.
It's just more like, 25 to 33 is generally the standard discount now. You can't get 55% like you used to.
So
like 50 to 55.
Yeah.
Because they don't do the 40% off publisher sales anymore for the most part.
No.
Except for that one random time when they actually did do a 7 Seas sale on Cyber Monday.
Was this at Indigo?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
I believe it was only for one day that they did that too.
Wow.
Maybe two. I think it was only one.
Maybe I missed out on something then. No, just the odd thing that does come up. Remember the I'm Sorry sale for Indigo a couple months ago after their cyber attack. 30%. Was it buy two get one free?
No, it was
like
wasn't it 20? I thought it was just generally 20 off.
I think it was buy two get one. Well, they had that. They had a version of that as well.
No, I didn't see a buy two get one free.
It was in store. There was an in-store promotion, but it was only in stock. In store with
yeah, that's not an I'm Sorry sale. That was just a general manga sale that they were doing.
Okay, but then there's the but then coming back, there is the I'm Sorry sale.
Yeah, that coupon did not stack with that other sale going on at the time. That coupon was never meant to stack with other existing sales.
The only thing you could stack it with is if you had Plum Plus, right?
And if you happen to have your birthday coupon.
Oh, that, yes.
If you were born in March or you lied and said your birthday was in March when you created your account.
How many accounts do you have?
I only have one.
Okay.
But the thing was, there was a point in time where you could have changed your birthday whenever you wanted.
Well, you did hint they were tightening up loopholes.
No, they now fixed that loophole. So if you were really a dick, you could have just changed your birthday at the end of each month, and then when the next month rolls around, you would have gotten the coupon again. That 20% off coupon, and back then, most coupons did stack.
Yeah.
You couldn't be able to stack the 20% off birthday coupon with the 10% off new membership if you buy $50 or more. Those two never stacked, but it always stacks with Plum Plus. And then you could have still used it with another sale.
Yeah. So anyway, that's how I ended up with quintessential quintuplets. Anyway, which I'll eventually read. I've watched the first couple episodes. I've read the first 2 volumes of the manga. Thought it was interesting enough, if not fall in love with it. So I'd read the rest.
I really do want to read that.
And then I watched I think 1 or 2 episodes of the anime as well. So I just want to see where it goes. Please no spoilers. But yeah, this article is interesting, and as I said, it was at best a skim. I want to take a longer read of it, and then maybe we can just have a longer conversation when with with everybody else around the table. When James comes back and when Amy comes back, when Mo just sits.
You didn't have to say that, Mike. Rude.
Well, it's the gag, right? He said a lot last time, though. We have to admit.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, we might.
It's like I feel like I've always felt like the whole manga recession that happened in like 07, 08 is always in the back of the minds of the North American manga publishers. So that's why it kind of feels like as if they are kind of just bracing themselves for and like maybe making their adjustments as needed.
Yeah, there's a but for me, and that's I just don't think it'll be that bad. It'll be a downturn. It'll be something to adjust to. But I don't think the sky's about to fall.
Especially because now that anime is as accessible as it ever was.
Yeah, and
you will always have people watching the newest thing or maybe stumbling on an older title if it happens to still be up for streaming, because they don't always stick around nowadays.
Well, yeah, we kind of talked about that last episode, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
In the last regular episode. I mean,
and then they'll go back and then look for it. So right now, for example, James and I went to Anime Extreme on Sunday, and I overheard a conversation where like a customer was asking for Blue Lock, and they were sold out of everything. They had no copies of Blue Lock in stock at that point.
Yeah, maybe that might be Blue Lock might be enjoying as good a perfect storm, if there's such a thing as good a perfect storm as possible. Bump from the World Cup, which in turn gave a little bit more attention to the anime, which in turn will give more attention to the manga right now.
Yep, anime will a good anime adaptation will always boost sales of the manga.
That's what's happening here, and it was so timely. It was so timely because it was for the Japanese national team, it was their strikers that were the highlights, and that's what Blue Lock is about, or at its heart is about, right? Or okay, its basic premise. But it kind of comes back down to a popular marketing model that I would have heard many years ago, which is, read the movie. Like that was the trend in bookstores in the 90s, because a lot of novels were being adapted into major motion pictures. So part of the promotion was to re-release the novel, but with the movie cover instead.
Yeah.
It's basically along this line. There's exposure to the IP is more prevalent than ever, or at least it's just a lot. There is more chance for exposure to the IP,
and you can't discount live action adaptations as well. So,
yeah, well, that's probably, and that could be the next part of the. I would say viable part of the media mix. It's there. It's just that we obviously the fandom, our fandom, has a love-hate relationship with them at this point in time.
Well, no, and it's not necessarily just potential North American adaptations of manga or anime. It's, foreign adaptations like in Europe or Japanese adaptations.
And yes,
so for example, Alice in Borderland.
Yes. Like the one that's been airing on Netflix?
Yeah, like that in general has been well received, and there is a fan base for that show.
Anything, and the original thing was the live action, not an anime adaptation, right?
Well, no, the original source material, I believe, was the manga.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that it was adapted into a live action TV series.
And that's the popular, and that's the one that's been the hook for a
So
lot.
yes, so then you will get people looking for the manga. And I'm now curious now with the new Drops of God live action series, the
Which,
one that
yeah, I know, which
is
we
the
didn't have time.
co-production between Japan and France. Will sales of the digital release pick up? Because, the physical release that Vertical put out is out of print now.
So maybe, and in your wildest dreams, Kevin, a reprint. In your wildest dreams.
No, well, yeah, sure, but I don't see it happening.
That's why I said in your wildest dreams, because you've mentioned that before.
In case it's like a huge explosion, which I don't foresee happening, but I'll be honest. As much as I'm glad and appreciative of Kodansha fully translating and releasing the first Drops of God series digitally, I sometimes do wonder if it really made financial sense for them to do that.
What, the digital or the physical at any point?
Digital. Oh, the physical release and the circumstances behind that have been documented on the internet.
Okay.
At least in some aspects. Basically, for those who don't know,
you're gonna have Cole's notes to this, right?
Yes, I'll try my best to.
Or what's the phrase? TL
DR.
Yeah, TLDR.
Too long, didn't read, but
Cole's notes is such an old term. I'm sorry.
Oh, don't worry about it. So when Vertical licensed the Drops of God, the license was set up so that they only licensed, I believe, the first 8 volumes. And in order to potentially put out the next volume, each book had to hit certain sales numbers. That only really happened for volume 1, if I recall correctly. Because I remember back in the day, Vertical tried to promote the Drops of God to a non-anime, non-manga audience, not the traditional audience that you would normally promote it to. So they would, if I'm not mistaken, it's been so long, I might have some of my facts incorrect, but like they would hold events such as they would hold wine tasting events, or they would try and get like wine critics to read it, and I think they did get advertisements in like magazines that would be geared towards the wine crowd, like things like that, like those were the things that they tried to do to get it out there. And so volume 1 certainly sold well enough to unlock the next volume, but the rest didn't follow suit. So I feel the impression I get is that, the non-traditional audience that they were trying to get bought that volume 1, thought that, this was pretty cool, but then just wouldn't commit to the next volume. That's what it seems to have turned out to be, if I recall correctly.
And repeat it again. How long ago was it? How many years?
Oh, this probably was 10 years at this point.
Yeah, and it's always just worth noting. Times have changed. And maybe this, in your wildest dreams again. Let's see how the reception for the Apple TV adaptation goes.
Yep. And fall of 2011 was when the first omnibus volume of the Drops of God came out.
Okay. And I remember you're not the only person who's a fan that I know.
And so that volume that was unlocked, Vertical decided to do the New World book. Give me a second.
Mm-hmm. But I will state that Kevin isn't the only person who I know of who holds some interest. It's one of our regular listeners, and I know Squirrely will listen to this sooner or later, and they'll probably add something to the story that's probably worth mentioning in some months down the road. But I know that I remember reading the Cult of Mac, or skimming through the Cult of Mac review of the first episodes of Drops of God, and it was guarded optimism. That's the sense I got. They liked what they saw, but they were really starting to wonder where it would eventually go. And for what it's worth, we haven't had a chance. None of us have had a chance to see it yet. We could at least watch the first episode. That's the policy on Apple TV Plus. We were supposed to have done that this week. Like, just all meet up, all gather, and then just watch that first episode.
We should still try and do that.
Yeah. So, just just something to put out there, and maybe that's a part of the story we'll have to keep up with too.
So yeah, I'm curious now that whether or not will people actually try and look for those Vertical releases now.
Mm-hmm. Or will people turn to, say, the digital platforms? Not necessarily K-manga, because this is a Kodansha, of course, but just a digital version. And I know in this Debeoki article, they also make passing reference to libraries as well, and how they're important to what's to come as well.
I believe the Drops of God is still available to read on Comixology in the US if you have that membership. Or are they even still technically around? I always kind of forget. I think, because I know there were layoffs at Comixology lately, but
I thought it was all but gone. But that's just me.
I forgot, to be honest, because that was where it launched. And then for us in Canada, our Comixology was never quite the same functionally, but I believe it was on Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, if you do have an Amazon Prime membership, then you get that. Kind of like how in the States, if you had Amazon Prime, you had Comixology as well, if I remember correctly.
I think they're separate. I think last I checked, Kindle Unlimited and Prime are separate memberships. Last I checked. So I would double check that. I have to. I would double check that. But that would be a hell of a value if that was the case. So anyway, there's some stuff to consider. I think, I do want to take a longer read of this article and actually make notes. And then we'll see where we go, because there's a lot of other parts to this story. Yes, we've talked about just big names, but there are still smaller names. We hinted at it. And, as I said, maybe this is something we can have when we can talk about at length when James and Amy and Mo return to the table. In any event, that's a few thoughts, at least where we think the business is, or at least the latest news on the manga business, and where it sits in the present ecosystem.
One thing does come to mind right now. So as of this recording,
yes,
I don't think K-manga has announced their pricing yet. Still,
it's supposed to be this month, right?
It's launching in 10 days as of this recording.
Eep.
So this is May. We had just now crossed into May 3rd.
Eastern time.
As of this recording, we passed midnight.
Mm-hmm.
So, actually, no, I'm mistaken.
It's
Technically,
sooner.
it's 8 days now.
It's sooner. And we don't know anything at this stage. We still don't know the greatest amount. Well, this will be interesting.
So it come to my attention that Kodansha USA, their higher ups are Japanese, and I believe they could have come from the Japanese branch. So last time I thought that there was a possibility that the Japanese Kodansha and the North American Kodansha may have been kind of debating this. Although I think back on it, who knows if that was real, like that would actually make sense. It would make more sense if, let's say, on the higher ups who are Japanese would want to do the coin based system, and then they're getting, maybe there's deliberations being held still. Who knows, right?
We can only guess.
But it because it otherwise doesn't make sense for them to still not announce how the pricing structure is.
No, I'd be curious. I think a lot of people are.
It's like, why would they not tell you at this point? Unless they do think that what they're doing isn't the best idea, but they're just not going to say it until the last possible moment. But then it's like, why would you even hold out? Unless they really haven't figured it out yet.
Well, they don't. It depends on how DOA it could get. How is there a level? Is there different levels of dead on arrival we can talk about here? Because maybe that's where we're leading to.
So
there's dead on arrival, and then there's really dead on arrival.
Like the Square Enix manga app that they put out was basically dead on arrival.
Although it's still around, and they say they're trying to improve. And that was hinted in the Aoki article.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of time.
It's just, I think because it seemingly stumbled so badly, are people willing to give it a chance? And this is maybe where Kodansha is.
See, Kodansha has enough of a strong back catalog of titles that, like, any mistakes they may make can be just fixed over time, or they can make those decisions to change,
and would still salvage if there is something to if we have to salvage something.
Because I feel like maybe it's just one of those things where you just got to put it out, see how it goes, and then if you're really not getting the results you want, and that's when you have to make a decision on what to do next.
Yeah. Okay. But okay, you know what? That'll probably be certainly something we'll keep our eye on as the month goes and we meet quota.
See, I feel like I believe Bookwalker has their way of, like, you directly buy the chapters, you earn coins with your purchases, and then you can redeem coins for more purchases or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not totally sure about that one. Maybe I'll just, if like there's only one title that has my attention there right now. It's My Stepmom's Daughter Is My Ex. That's the only title I think I can think of right now that has my attention in that under that label. Sadly, and funny enough, it's because I've watched episodes of the anime.
Okay.
So yeah, there's that ecosystem at work, right? Again, right?
See, because at least in that case, it's kind of a hybrid, because like you're paying with real money. It's just, yes, you receive additional currency that you can then use. It's
Yeah,
not.
I
Whereas it's not like as if you're using money to buy the currency, and it's that currency is what's needed to buy the product.
it's like you get more currency, and then you can use that to help you get. Is that it?
Basically,
Okay.
you're basically buying in-app currency.
You're buying in-app. Yeah, it just anyway. The thing is, volumes are available at least on Kindle, so it's on ebook. If you're willing to pay $10, don't know yet.
Yeah, but like,
maybe I'll just finish the anime.
Kodansha has like a fair amount of good titles, and they also have built up a pretty robust digital only backlog too.
And that I know you mentioned that, and that's why that's why there's. Well, you're basically it's just coming back to what's at stake here, and what could help it, one way or another, right? That back catalog is important. It could be what keeps it afloat. It could be what keeps it steady, despite how we think it's about to go. But what do I know, right?
Yeah.
Can before we start to wrap it up tonight, can I go back to just one other metaphor or analogy from that Deb Aoki article? And
Sure.
Maybe this is an illustration of how, what to expect as time goes, right? We mentioned that that seemingly sales have plateaued a little bit, and while growth will be still on the uptick, it's probably not as explosive as it had been in the earlier years of the pandemic for manga sales, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I heard it put in those terms, I thought of our old university anime club at York University.
Okay.
And I mentioned back in January, I had visited them just to see how they're doing, just to see how they had managed. And because they hadn't done anything in person with their fans, with their members in a couple years. And this was the first, well, they had their last term, but they had the fall term, but they were beginning their winter term. And I just wanted to see how they were doing. And they told me, and I forgot the exact number of memberships they had, but I just know it was mind-boggling. It was a record for them. And they were able to, and with the memberships came a lot of income. And they've used it and bought various pieces of equipment to help them run the club from this point forward.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah, and I forgot the exact number. The people who run the club now hinted it to me. I just know I was really impressed with it. But they also told me they're preparing for the future. They said, we're not going to pull this many members next year. We'll be happy if we can pull out half this many next year. I think it was like, I should try and remember the exact number so as not to inflate it. I just know it was a really, really impressive number. I know in my day running that group, I was happy during any one term to see at least 100 members.
Like that signed up.
That would have signed up in any form, 100 members. And I know the only question is how many times that many it is for this academic year there.
See, when I was part of my anime club at UTM, my hope at the time when I ended up becoming involved was how many people can we get to stick around? Because it did weigh in the back of my mind that if we don't get enough people to stick around and want to be execs, then we don't know how long the club will last.
Mm-hmm. And that contrast that with what I know of the club today. People want to see it go, keep it going, and they have their visions for it. People who want to become leaders within that club, then they have their visions for it. Right? Mm-hmm. They consider it a wonderful space, a social space. Many of them have made friends. It's a very good atmosphere. The type it's just a really friendly atmosphere there. And I'll always say I was really impressed with what I saw. But it's also just different from my time when I ran a club, the exact same club back then. So just a thought. And, as I said, they're preparing for their future the same way. It's just that they think that it won't be as much. They wouldn't have that post-COVID bump. So they have to, they have to plan accordingly. But just a thought.
Whereas with my anime club, I don't think they exist anymore because I think the pandemic killed the club.
Ah, okay.
Because I mentioned in the past that I tried to find them at one point and I couldn't find them.
So you still haven't?
Well, I didn't try beyond that one time, but okay. It's not a good sign when you don't see the club have a office space
or any presence
in the student center.
Just any presence, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's the other bit I want to mention there? My train of thought that I wanted to add to the club in terms of the club is I want to mention something else concerning the club. Contrast that with the fact that that the anime club at York University is considered one of the bigger social clubs there. So I think they told me, huh?
You mean as a whole?
Yeah. That's what they hinted to me. By membership, it's probably the biggest social club on campus. So, yeah, the number, if I'm able to remember it again, yeah, quite a bit. Okay. Oh, did you want to add anything, or should I just move on? Because I did want to hype up one last thing before we go tonight.
Oh.
And it's going to be you giving me a pep talk.
Oh, really?
Yes. You know where I'm about to go with this.
I haven't really read anything new since the last recording, so I'd say go ahead.
Okay. No, that's not the pep talk I'm asking you to give me.
Oh no, because I would have probably just said something about what I've been reading, but
okay.
But yeah, nothing new.
Well, I mean, as I said, I'm reading. My own present read is Beastars Volume 6. I kind of taken a pause on reading Kaguya-sama because I stopped at 19, but I'll continue that later on my own time. But it's Beastars right now, and just since we're into May, at the beginning of the month of May, we're thinking also to the end of it when Anime North happens. And we can confirm now for us, we are set to do recordings beginning at 10 p.m. on the Friday night and the Saturday night. Yes, that'll put us head to head against the usual, which means nobody's going to come in head to head with the usual stuff like Anime Hell, which means nobody's going to come and watch us, which is,
or whatever rave that's going on.
Whatever rave will be going on Saturday, which is quite fine with me. However you want to come for a quiet conversation, sure. But we are now set. But our time is confirmed now for 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday night. Location probably in roughly the same spot if you ever looked for us back then. Well, more details to come. But also for me and Kevin, yes, we are doing the Noma no Ichi. If things lined up today, we would have started doing Kevin would have started helping me with my annual storage locker dive for stuff to sell at said Noma no Ichi.
We're table buddies, I believe, as well.
Yes, we have tables beside each other. It's just that I'll probably have to leave just a little early, so I can start setting up for the taping that night.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I know I'll bring out items, and I know it'll be hopefully be enough to say it was worth paying is it $40 this year for the table?
I forgot the base amount, but maybe it's 50. But then if you did have a table last year, you do get a discount.
Okay, but it should be enough to still say it was worth doing it. So
in your case, I don't think it'd be very hard.
Considering what I'll pull out, and you'll help me pull out, I hope, from the storage locker when the time comes.
When are we doing this, Mike?
It was supposed to have been. We would have done part 1 of it today. We should have done part 1 of it today, but hey, what can you do?
Yeah,
we'll do part 1 of it in a few days. Exactly how many days?
Well, you see, you ended that statement with a question.
That's why I need the pep talk, Kevin. That's why I need the pep talk.
Yeah, you should, just because
you need
should be documenting your stuff anyway.
Yeah, that's the problem. Part of it's a twofold thing to properly catalog what's still in there from the first after the first time I really did the Nomi 6 years ago. It's now 6 years, I think.
Yeah, because I can only ask you so many times until I sound annoying.
Trust me, you're not anywhere close to that. If it makes you feel any better, because once in a while it's needed. So we'll tell you more about that in the weeks leading up to Anime North. Or if you're curious, and chances are we'll put up items on our Twitter feed at Anime Roundtable.
Oh, really? You're going to do that?
I think I'll put up the odd item. Just to mention that. Just anything to help generate any interest in any of the items I'll put up. Yes, check out the Tea House of the Maple. Is that what it's called?
You almost had it. It's the Tea House of the Maple Moon.
Check out the forums there. We'll put up items there. I know that the exchanges have started.
That is the official forums of Anime North, by the way.
Yes. So you'll see the link on the AN website. And then you can always pay attention to us for other things. Once again, Twitter and Instagram at Anime Roundtable, animeroundtable.com, the finally updated website, at least in terms of content. Hopefully it'll be pulled into the 2020s in the very near future. Oh, TikTok. Yeah. TikTok at Anime Roundtable as well. Well, I'll put up the odd thing. Although, as I said, Kevin may take some of the controls soon.
In 2025.
Well, at least it'll be in 2020s. Twitch.tv/Anime Roundtable. Still figuring out how we'll do it. The thing is, it's the reason I haven't started playing Yakuza Kiwami 2. I'm kicking myself on this one. And then maybe we'll stream it on the YouTube channel. But yeah, as I said, just something to just to chat around the Space Eater.
Yes, give us 5 stars if you.
Oh yeah,
like this.
Give us a thumb up. Yeah, give us a thumbs up wherever you get your podcasts, and hopefully it'll help us in the future.
Feel free to let people know that we exist, because we're bad at doing that ourselves.
Well, overall, yes, but we're here, and we'll keep trying. Anyway, tell you what, I'm going to go back to reading. I'll go back to reading Beastars. I'll give you a few more thoughts later on. Okay.
Okay.
And then, or maybe I'll read Quintessential Quintuplets again, and I'll tell you that. I'll give you a few more.
Did that wolf girl show up yet?
Oh, in Beastars?
Yeah.
Yes, I guess. I think I know who you're talking about. It's
okay.
It's Juno, right?
I believe that's her name. Yeah. She's an interesting one.
Well, she debuted in Volume 5.
Oh, okay.
So I'm in 6, and she's starting to become significant.
Yeah, I kind of forgot where I left off in Beastars myself.
Okay. Good read. I'm having fun. A good read. It's just sometimes I have trouble making time for it, much less anime. It's really scary.
I have friends who will not try out Beastars because they just think it's a big furry fest, and it's like
they're really missing out.
sure, but
But
it's so much more than that. It's so
I
much more than just anthropomorphic animals.
yeah, but I thought yeah, okay, fine. Their choice. I think I'm enjoying it. So I'll give you as I read it, I'll give a few more thoughts, right? And maybe hopefully by then I'll have my own copies, not the library copies I'm presently holding. Hopefully.
I'm waiting for TPL to buy volume 17 of Railgun so I can catch up with it. That's the current volume that's out by 7 Seas right now.
Yeah, and that's your title right now, right? That's your go-to.
Yeah, and I also I've been meaning to resume reading Batum as well because I'm about the halfway point of that, or a little bit past that.
Out of like in the Purgatory Years, that's one title I remember hearing about.
It's a pretty based series, I have to say.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily like it's not a great series, but it does entertain if you're a 15-year-old male.
Yeah, I know, we're just a little older than that. Hey, there's nothing like reliving some of your youth.
It gets pretty dumb later on. I kind of flipped through some of those later chapters. I don't know why it went that direction.
Sometimes that's a guilty pleasure too. Is this
actually it's
when you say
like,
dumb? Is this guilty pleasure dumb?
It had to become a guilty pleasure for me. I would say earlier chapters of Batum were fine. Like it does start off strong, and I won't lie, it's a very like wish fulfillment kind of series, like because the main character is basically just a guy who played this one online game way too much,
and then
to his detriment in society. So in terms of society, because he is a NEET, and then he gets thrown into this real life version of the game, and because he has that baseline knowledge of the game is why he is able to excel at it, or at least stay alive.
Yeah, I remember the premise, which is kind of sad.
Certain things introduced later on where that does take it in a strange and
you hinted
questionable direction.
Yeah, and that's the dumb you're talking about, right?
And
Almost.
they don't do Himiko any real favors as well, because they basically just make her a damsel. Yeah, spoiler alert for Batum.
Well, now you know what we're all up to. We'll catch up with the others in a couple weeks. I think a couple weeks. Tune in for that, won't you? Have a good night.
Have a good night.